Now, questions are also arising about a possible resurgence of Islamic State in the Philippines after authorities confirmed the two suspects in the Bondi shooting spent almost all of November in the country. Now, for more on this and also the broader risks across the region, we're joined by Professor Greg Barton. He is rector and professor of global Islamic politics at Deakin University, Lancaster University, Indonesia. Professor, welcome to the show. Now, based on what we know so far, does this attack fit the profile of an organized Islamic State operation, or are we looking at an inspired but largely self-directed actors?
It seems to be very much the second. These two individuals, there were two gunmen, but they acted as lone actors. In other words, one tight family unit, not communicating to others in Sydney or Australia or even internationally. And yet there is this other unusual factor. They travelled to the Philippines in November, coming back just weeks before the attack, meeting, we think, with Islamic State leaders there. They flew into Manila, but they went down to Davao and therefore to Mindanao. We'll have to wait and get more information, but it's sort of a strange element to what seemed to be a classic lone actor attack, that they were reaching out, perhaps to get blessing and sort of psychological confidence they're on the right path.
What does this attack then tell us about the possible resurgence of IS in the Philippines?
I'm not sure it tells us there's a resurgence. I think what it reminds us is that IS never went away. IS was there, of course, in 2014. Abu Sayyaf Group and others swore allegiance to IS. We thought it was a marketing rebrand move. 2017, the siege of Marawi, which went on for 7 months, was led by people swearing allegiance to ISIS, including Abu Sayyaf. Of course, most of those individuals have been arrested, shot, or otherwise out of action. Many have repented. But that still leaves a sizable minority who, either living quietly in cities or in jungle camps, are determined to push on with the Islamic State cause. They've never really gone away. Globally, of course, in Afghanistan, in Africa, Islamic State, along with Al-Qaeda, is still very active.
Yeah, and with that activity, we know that Mindanao has got a long history of IS-aligned factions, but also there were years of sustained crackdowns as well. What's changed recently that could perhaps explain renewed concern? Or have there been recent efforts by the government to clamp down on its activities recently?
Well, what's happened recently is regional elections. The Bangsamoro autonomous region has been a good success in Western Mindanao in terms of getting most people to engage in peacekeeping and conflict resolution. But for a long time, there was an amnesty on elections. The Bangsamoro groups were given slots in local government. Now, this year, there are local elections. And of course, it's the nature of elections. Some people win, some people miss out. And those who miss out attempted to go back to old ways of operating. So it's a dangerous point. Can the peace process be bedded down and last the distance? Or does this begin to see it breaking up? I think it's going to last the distance, but there are going to be some troublemakers that come out of this. They've never gone away. We're just reminded that they're still there.
Yeah, and speaking of that reminder as well, what is the likelihood then of a similar threat emerging in Southeast Asia? Is there a cause for concern?
Look, I think there certainly is a cause for concern. I mean, one of the tragic lessons from what happened in Bondi is it only takes two amateurs, in this case armed with hunting rifles, single action, bolt action rifles that are not quick to reload, in Southeast Asia, particularly in the Philippines, but all of Southeast Asia therefore is vulnerable. We've got a vast flood of automatic weapons, AK-47 type assault rifles. Philippines in particular, you go to Manila airport and there's a nice little kiosk that asks you to check your guns in before boarding a flight. Guns are ubiquitous. Thankfully, we don't see mass shootings on a large scale in the Philippines, but it is possible. And those guns could come across the border, sea border, to Malaysia, to Indonesia. They could even penetrate Singapore. So, we need to be realistic about the threat that's posed. And the demonstration effect, the copycat effect of two amateur gunmen causing such lethality so tragically in Bondi, Sydney, is likely to have others thinking, well, if they could do it, I could do it.
Yeah, and let's go deeper into the security situation then. What does this case expose when it comes to intelligence blind spots, especially when it comes to these short overseas trips? We're looking at dual passports and also low-level radicalization that didn't trigger alarms until it was too late.
Yeah, there's a couple of challenges here. The first and obvious challenge is that lone actor attacks are very difficult to predict and very hard to prevent, and public spaces are vulnerable. They're inherently vulnerable. No doubt, I'm sure there will be findings that more should have been done to protect the Bondi Park where the Hanukkah by the Sea event was taking place. But still, we need to recognise it is hard. Secondly, thinking of the case of Navid Akram, he came onto the radar of ASIO and local counterterrorism authorities in 2019. He was 17. They investigated for some months, decided he was just a teenager going through a bad phase. He didn't represent an immediate threat. That was understandable at the time, but it's not clear that there were follow-up visits in the months and the years that followed. It's not clear that anyone knew that his father had radicalized. And that's a reminder that this sort of deep ideological convictions don't fade away overnight unless there's some concerted effort to rehabilitate people. And, in wishful thinking, we can hope that what's in the past, Islamic State Caliphate, all of that drama is past us. It's not so simple.
Professor, thank you so much for your insights. That was Professor Greg Barton, who is rector and professor of global Islamic politics at Deakin University, Lancaster University, Indonesia.